Hello, I'm Dr. Basil Considine. I'm here from the ACU Online Writing Center, and today we're going to be talking about how to write about organizational contexts and provide critical assessments. This is a webinar that looks at a task that comes up in many programs, especially those when you're looking to do consulting or organizational improvement, but it happens that the sample assignment that we're using as a catalyst for discussion is from the EdD program. If you are new to the Online Writing Center, well, welcome. We have many different programs with which we work with students in just about all of the ACU Online or ACU Dallas programs. If you're new to this, then don't worry, we're going to go through some of those services on offer. If you are a returning veteran user of the Writing Center, you can skip ahead. It'll also just be a couple minutes. So, the Writing Center works with students at any point in the writing process. You could be just looking at the instructions and wondering how to interpret them, to having a complete written paper that you have even gotten feedback on that you're looking to do further improvement, and anywhere in between. So please don't feel that you can't submit a draft to us because you aren't too far in the process. If you have something, anything, whether it's questions or text, send it our way with any specific requests, and we're happy to help. There's no charge for any of our Writing Center services, whether it's a webinar like this, or a one-on-one consultation, or using any of the resources that we have. Most students will come work with us to get feedback on their drafts through appointments. Appointments come in two basic flavors. There are asynchronous appointments, where you schedule a time. By that time, you upload a copy of your paper with any special requests for feedback, and then we send you feedback via email, generally within 24 hours. The other type of appointment is a real-time appointment. These can be via either phone or Zoom at your preference. And for those, again, you will schedule a time. And when you reach that time, you'll open a Zoom link or get a phone call from us, and we'll go from there. Now, if you're scheduling an appointment in real time, do remember that we use Central Time for everything here at ACU. If you're in a different time zone, just let us know so then we can send you an extra reminder. And for the choice of phone or Zoom, it's really a question of what you think will be most useful to you. If you prefer to just focus on asking questions and you'd rather not have the visual distraction of a screen, that's totally fine. We have students who will call and ask questions and someone else is driving them through rush hour traffic. That's fine. And other people who prefer to be able to see things like formatting or view the text on screen because it helps them focus. And if that's the case, just request a Zoom appointment. All right, so the basic process, you'll go through my.acu.edu. And under resources, you can select the Online Writing Center. There'll be links and how-to videos. They'll take you eventually to scheduling an appointment at WC Online. To submit your paper, you'll be going to the Writing Center's Canvas site. And again, you'll normally be getting your feedback within 24 hours. If it's, say, Thanksgiving holiday, we do take a holiday as well. But in any case, we always want to get feedback to you in time for you to incorporate it, to respond to the feedback before any submission deadline. So if, for example, it's a Friday where the papers are due at 11:59 p.m., we'll get that feedback to you as soon as we can. If it's a normal week in the term where you need to get your paper uploaded by 11:59 p.m. on a Monday, we try and get feedback to you from all appointments made the previous day or that day by the early afternoon. If you go to our Writing Webinars page, make sure to scroll down to get to the tab Guide and to select program in question, the program that you're enrolled in, let's say in this case Leadership Program, and that will show you all of the courses in order that we have tie-ins videos sorted also by the week. So for example, you can see for Leadership 701, we have a specific tie-in with the Leadership 701 Week 2 assignment. And if you scroll down from there, you'd see many more tie-ins going week 2, week 4, etc. All right, you'll see me referencing the APA course paper template. We also have a YouTube channel for convenient watching our videos on the go, and a blog where we explore various topics. Our main learning objectives today. First, we're going to understand the organizational context paper assignment from Leadership 721. Then we'll step back and talk about how to write about organizational context, about this genre of writing. And then we'll talk about how to take the instructions and embark on outlining and drafting your paper. So let's dive into that assignment. So this is coming from the Contemporary Issues in Organizational Leadership course, and specifically the Week 1 Organizational Context Paper assignment. So this begins with a orienting note. After completing the readings for Week 1 and watching the videos, consider your organization's context, or an organization you have or intend to work for. Now, I would say it's a trade-off between whether you want to be analyzing the place that you're working right now or have worked for, or if you are looking towards the next job that you want to get and wanting to prepare material that you could potentially use in that job or an interview to get that job. And that's really a philosophical question of what you would prefer to do. But let's say that you are writing about an organization that you are currently working for, and I'll use that framing for the rest of the discussion here. So write a paper of approximately 2.5 to 3 pages that describes the current and future challenges of your organization's context. Note that this is about the organization's context, not just the organization itself. Focus especially on the changes that are taking place in areas such as technology, social trends, for example, demographics and cultural changes, political and economic developments, and other contextual issues, for example, legal changes, industry changes, environmental changes. Create a list of all the trends and challenges you can think of, and then select 3 to 4 that you will focus on for this paper. Cite the class text and at least 2 additional credible sources in your paper. Consider sources that examine trends in your organization's context, such as industry publications or journal articles. So this is saying that you have a responsibility to not just use the course textbook, but to go out and find some sources. And if you're looking for how to do a targeted literature search, well, we did a webinar on that earlier this week, so please feel free to check that out. Okay, let's see. Include a very brief introduction of the context. So you're starting with talking about the context, but you're not just exploring that whole thing. It's particularly the context as it pertains to your organization, or the parts of the context that your organization is interfacing with. Demonstrate in the body of your paper your awareness of the current and future challenges of leading in your organization's context. For your paper's conclusion, express what type of leadership values and attributes you believe will be needed to lead successfully in the organizational context you have described. So this is a reminder to keep things focused and don't depart from the focus that you've chosen. And then we have a note here saying that your paper should be in APA format with appropriate citations and references, and a reminder that the main course text is an edited volume where there's the editor, Hickman, but the individual chapters beyond the introduction and so forth, that the main chapters have different authors. So make sure that you are correctly listing the authors of those chapters in your citations and in your references. And of course, this being an APA style, to have a title page and a reference list, which don't count towards the page limit. Note that it says approximately 2.5 to 3 pages here, and that on this area, it specifies 3-page limit, so let's not go over 3 pages. And then some reminders included in the instructions to make sure you cite and provide your references, that you have the reference page, that you are doing all your due diligence to make sure that you turn in high-quality polished writing, including proofreading and APA style. If we look at the rubric here, we see that we have the mandate to be using additional sources, so make sure you do that. It'd be embarrassing to lose those points. We have making sure that you demonstrate your understanding and application of the readings to your organization, that you've identified the right number of trends and back them up with cited sources. And so a lot of this is, okay, have you done the things that they have asked you to? So let's keep that in mind as we move to the outlining stage. So what about writing about organizational context? Let's back up a little bit. So let's first define what an organizational context is. And this is something that the reading from the module goes into, but let's look at this more generally. So this is coming from the journal article, Organizational Context Matters, Research Toolkit for Conducting Standardized Case Studies of Integrated Care Initiatives. It happens to be talking about healthcare. But look at this and see if this sounds like something you can apply elsewhere. We use the term organizational context broadly to describe the setting in which an integrated care initiative is implemented and to capture all organizational factors that are not a direct part of the initiative, such as governance structures, leadership approach, and organizational culture. This definition encompasses both internal organizational factors as well as collective interorganizational factors needed to leverage and combine resources from multiple organizations in the delivery of integrated care. If we take just the bolded text, we get something that we can use outside of healthcare as well. Organizational context broadly describes the setting and captures all organizational factors that are not a direct part of the initiative, such as governance structures, leadership approach, and organizational culture. This encompasses both internal organizational factors as well as collective internal organizational factors needed to leverage and combine resources from multiple organizations. Here's another one we might look at. The context of the organization consists of the environment in which it operates and refers to internal and external issues relevant to the activity of the organization. As a first step in defining the organizational context, I suggest following a course that will put you in a position to better define your quality policy, to identify the business environment in which the organization is active, to identify which internal and external issues in this environment influence the organization, and to understand who the relevant interested parties are. Note that internal and external, or internal and inter, between, are emphasized in both definitions. The following is the suggested process for an effective definition of the context of the organization. The definition of the context of the organization will begin with a PEST, that is political, economic, social, and technological factors analysis, which will provide inputs for the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis. SWOT analysis will define inputs for the determination of the internal and external issues, which will help identifying relevant interested parties. Identifying interested parties will assist in defining the scope of the quality management system, and the scope of the quality management system will provide the foundation of the quality management system. So, as with the paper requirements, we're just saying, okay, stick to a couple very important things. This definition is also saying, okay, let's divide our concerns into a couple areas, and then focus on those particular and using those selected areas to define how you're going to make things better. So let's take a view from above. When you're writing about an organizational context, you need to first decide what is most relevant. Now, whether you're working for an organization now, or you're looking at one that you are hoping to work for, or you're looking retrospectively at one you've worked at previously, the important thing is to first decide what is most relevant. You don't have space to write about everything. You don't have time to try and affect absolutely everything. So pick what is most relevant. Introduce the organization in brief, then come to the most relevant parts in detail. Explain to us why this group of things you've selected, why that is the most relevant here. And you'll note when you're looking at this list here, they're specifically breaking things down into terms of PEST and SWOT analyses, so you can use a set of criteria like that when you are deciding what is most relevant. Compare the present situation or circumstances to the near and distant future. Is this organization prepared for the respective challenges, and why? What should they do? And then in this case, we want to see these specific assignment instructions to see exactly how to organize it. And if we back up to look at the assignment instructions, we see that there is a specific order. Okay, brief introduction, and then describe the current and future challenges, and then the conclusion, okay, what to do about it, what leadership values and attributes should be used. So we're taking part of the organization's context to focus on and to give answers for how you think that can be addressed or improved, or how to meet the demands. So if we take that and move forward, we can now progress to the outlining and drafting stage. So if you don't have it already, go ahead and grab a copy of our ACU course paper template. So I have here a blank copy of our APA course paper template, and go ahead and start out by typing in the name of your assignment. Now, it doesn't need to be fancy. Descriptive is fine. And I'll go ahead and remove this placeholder. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started by copying and pasting in the assignment instruction. Now, after copying and pasting, you might see something like this situation here where the font doesn't quite match. So go ahead and you see this little clipboard icon down here. Mouse over that, click on the pointed triangle, and go ahead and select Match Destination Formatting. Now you should have something that looks more like the paper formatting, in this case 12-point font, Times New Roman, double space, etc. I'm just going to italicize this for convenience here, and let's break this into different tasks here. So here, as you're planning, we know that there's going to be a list of things that you need to provide. So this is a good point to go ahead and make your list. Now, what you provide in here, you very likely will be assembling a larger list and then narrowing it down. That's fine. This is just a planning space here. Now, whatever you end up using here, well, you're going to go ahead piece by piece here and say, okay, so that's include a brief introduction. All right. Okay, what is the organization? This is where the organizational context goes in. And so, again, if we're referring to the previous instructions here, we need to be identifying trends and challenges. And in fact, let's go ahead and use that here. And you might have 3, you might have 4. But because you're describing the organization here and the challenges here, this will naturally come up to more or less the length specified there. There might be some where you combine things into one sentence, but still, if you're using roughly one sentence per trend or challenge, then you'll end up right with the length specified here. Alright, so here we have current and future. Alright, well that's something that naturally lends itself to either describing as, okay, current, and then there's a future of that, or to just deal with a paragraph about the current stuff and a paragraph about the future. Now, if this paper is going to be 2 to 3 pages long, then probably it's going to be a couple paragraphs for each. And again, some of these might be discussed together if they're closely related. and some of them might be similar if they're expected to remain the same. But let's talk with some hypotheticals here. Let's say that you were talking about a school that you're in an area that is demographically changing. And are the demographics the only concern? Probably not, because usually a shift like that is accompanied by other things going on. So you might have linguistic changes, you might have changes in the average age of a community, perhaps a bubble in the population, or you might have resources that are aging. For example, part of your context might be, oh, yes, this district has become very reluctant to raise property taxes for schools, and our building is about at the end of its rated lifetime. Or it could be something that is more of a general trend, like, oh, hey, we're getting X happening. As an example, a district that I lived in at one point in my life, they were having a infusion of immigrants from a new area. Now, they brought a lot of families with small children into the area, but there was a challenge because the particular linguistic background that they're coming from, there were not teachers trained in the district for that. And so that meant that one of the challenges was how to integrate those students and address their needs. And that might be something where you say, oh, okay, so we need to be doing a kind of district level, hey, let's build up this expertise. Or it might be something where you're trying to concentrate people in a particular area. You know, some districts have responded by creating magnet schools that provide certain options. And so these are the kind of things that you might be discussing here. And it's not just where things are now, but where they're expected to be in the future, whether that's the near future or the further out here. You know, if it's something like, oh, the average age keeps going up, that's more of a distant future thing. If it's, we have these families now, and in, let's say, 12 years, their kids will all be hitting the high school. Oh, that's a little bit more distant. It will take a different approach. Now, we get to the conclusion here. All right. So we've got these trends here. All right. What's the leadership approach needed for each? Now, this is probably going to be a two-part sentence thing where you list, okay, so tell us what the thing is and why or how it's applicable. Namely, let's say you say, okay, so we need to work on being a linguistically inclusive place, or we need to hire ESL teachers, or whatever it is. Okay, so how does that relate to leadership? Does that mean you need someone who can successfully lobby the school board? Someone who can successfully lobby so that when voters go to the ballot box that they will approve and override? Think about what will be needed to address these challenges, specifically from the leadership end, and how that will enable you to get past the challenge. Not everything will be financial, not everything will be human resources. There may be problems or challenges that go deeper than that. You might be looking at something like teacher retention, which is a huge and growing issue in many places as the teacher workforce gets older, or as more people quit the profession, especially in COVID. So whatever you've selected, make sure that you are clearly identifying what the problem is now or in the future or both, and what sort of leadership values are needed. And that's not just why it's needed, when it's needed, because you might have different leadership needs in the present versus in the future. I went to a high school that had a visionary leader, and afterwards I met one of the parents who said that her biggest criticism was that he didn't stay around for too many years. And that may be something you say, okay, well, it was great, but we needed more follow-through for the long term. So that could be one of the things that you talk about, that sort of, well, how are the needs evolving? How do you do the follow-through? So if you are looking at this and saying, well, I'm still not quite sure where to go with some of this, how to fill in 3 pages, I would recommend that you revisit the objectives for Module 1, because they're a good guidance set for how to navigate this paper. Because the goals for this week's are that you should be able to identify and discuss likely challenges for organizational leaders in coming decades, and to determine current and future challenges of leading in your organization's context. And if you have these things in mind as you're doing the reading for this week, it will be relatively easy to take notes as you go on things you might be referencing in your paper, and to also go looking for related literature that will help you expand on these things. You might also take a look at the reading for this week, and specifically the chapters that have been recommended from the Hickman book. And when you're looking at the readings, again, remember that if you're citing the introduction, by all means reference the editor, but if it's the specific chapters, make sure that you are citing the appropriate chapter and following the edited book chapter format. If you're citing the videos, remember you should have some things about the specific problems that you're investigating, but if it happens to coincide with one of these, make sure that you're citing these and referencing them correctly in APA style. And that you remember that for YouTube videos, you will use the channel name as the author, which if it happens to be someone's first and last name, you do actually write out the whole name because you're referencing the channel name. And so it doesn't get the normal last name, comma, initial in the reference, or just the last name in the citation. So, with that in mind, let's do a quick recap of what we've talked about today. We have looked at the specific assignment here, talked about how to step back and examine the goals of an organizational context, and talked about how to use the instructions, which in this case are quite specific, for planning out your paper. If you have additional questions, feel free to send us an email at onlinewritingcenter@acu.edu. You can schedule an appointment at my.acu.edu, or visit the Online Writing Center to find links to these and many other resources. Have a good night.